Before the spoken word, before the first star ignited in the velvet expanse of nothingness, a law was set into the architecture of existence. This law decreed that for every universe of chaotic, beautiful, and violent expansion, there must be a point of perfect, resonant stillness. This stillness is not an emptiness, but a presence, a soul designated not to rule or to conquer, but to simply be. This is the nature of a chosen one. They are not heroes of legend who wield swords of light, but are instead the silent fulcrum upon which the balance of worlds pivots. Their spirit is the unseen metronome that gives rhythm to the dance of fate and free will. Their very essence a harmonic that cancels out the dissonance of a cosmos in constant flux. When this soul is wounded, it is not a singular event of pain and blood. It is a schism in the foundation of reality, a deep and resonant crack in the cosmic bell whose toll announces that the fundamental law of balance has been violated, and the symphony of creation is about to lose its key. The first subtle but profound sign of this cosmic imbalance is the fraying of the universe's hidden language, the quiet poetry of synchronicity. That golden thread of meaningful coincidence which gently guides souls along their intended paths begins to unravel, becoming a tangled mess of random chance. The world, which once whispered its secrets through perfectly timed encounters and symbolic omens, now shouts in a cacophony of meaningless noise. A destined meeting between two souls who could change the course of history is thwarted by a single, errant gust of wind that turns ahead at the crucial moment. A life-altering insight, meant to arrive in a flash of inspiration, is lost in a sudden wave of inexplicable mental static. The feeling of being part of a grand, unfolding narrative is replaced by a chilling sense of existential randomness, as if the author of creation has abandoned the story, leaving the characters to wander aimlessly through a script of blank pages. This loss of guidance creates a deep, subconscious panic in the collective, the spiritual equivalent of vertigo, a feeling of being untethered and falling through an indifferent void. This inner chaos swiftly finds its reflection in the physical world. For the spirit of a chosen one is interwoven with the consciousness of the planet itself. The wound is not merely mirrored by nature, it is viscerally felt, an agony that pulses through the very ley lines of the earth. The great forests, which have stood as silent witnesses for millennia, fall into a solemn hush, the vibrant chorus of life within them muted by a palpable grief. The weather becomes a canvas for the wounded one's inner state, shifting with a violent emotional logic that defies meteorological explanation. Sudden, torrential downpours of strangely saline water fall from cloudless skies, while oppressive, suffocating calms settle over regions thick with an atmosphere of unshed tears. Animals, the pure barometers of the planet's health, display the most poignant signs of distress. Whales beach themselves in silent protest, their songs of the deep silenced. Birds that navigate by celestial magnetism lose their way, flying in frantic, disoriented patterns as if the stars themselves have lied. The earth itself seems to be in mourning, its vibrant life force weakened by the sympathetic pain it feels for its designated guardian. As the external world grieves, a chilling silence descends upon the inner landscapes of humanity. The wound to the chosen one acts like a spiritual insulator, disrupting the delicate frequency upon which communication with the divine travels. It is not that the source ceases to broadcast its love and wisdom, but that the receivers within every soul have become filled with static. Prayers that once ascended with the surety of a homing bird now feel as if they are spoken into a soundproof chamber, their words falling flat and unanswered. Intuition, that trusted inner compass, becomes unreliable, its needle spinning wildly between fear-based anxiety and profound emptiness. Those who have dedicated their lives to spiritual practice, the mystics, the meditators, the sensitives, find their sacred inner sanctums to be cold and desolate. The wellspring of divine inspiration runs dry, replaced by a spiritual drought that leaves the soul parched and desperate. This great famine of the spirit fosters a pervasive doubt, a creeping atheism of the heart that whispers to humanity that it is, and always has been, utterly alone in the cosmos. Into the vacuum created by this fading light, the collective shadow of humankind begins its slow, inexorable ascent. The constant, high vibrational presence of the Chosen One had acted as a form of psychic pressure, keeping the baser instincts and unhealed traumas of the collective repressed in the subconscious depths. With that pressure released, these dormant shadows stir and begin to seep into the light of day. This is not a sudden eruption of overt evil, but a far more insidious souring of the human spirit. Casual cruelty becomes more commonplace. Empathy requires a conscious and difficult effort, and the space for misunderstanding widens into a chasm. The ego, with its insatiable appetite for separation, fear, and conflict, becomes the dominant operating system for a growing portion of the populace. Society begins to fragment along ever finer lines of division, as the unifying field of grace that once held it together dissolves, leaving behind a world of isolated individuals, each imprisoned within the fortress of their own unexamined darkness. The wound's disruption extends beyond the realms of spirit and nature to tamper with the very river of time itself. The steady, rhythmic consciousness of the Chosen One serves as a metronome for the linear perception of reality. When that rhythm is broken by trauma, the flow of time becomes distorted and unreliable. The past ceases to be a fixed point of reference, its memories becoming fluid and uncertain, like a watercolor painting left in the rain. People experience a disorienting blend of temporal anomalies. Moments of intense déjà vu are followed by periods of jamais vu, where one's own life feels foreign and unfamiliar. The subjective experience of time becomes erratic and cruel. A day can feel like a fleeting instant, leaving one with the panicked sense of life slipping away unlived, while a moment of grief can stretch into an agonizing eternity from which there is no escape. This temporal warping instills a deep sense of unreality, making it impossible for people to ground themselves in the present moment, leaving them perpetually haunted by a mutable past and terrified of an amorphous, shape-shifting future. The low-frequency vibration of this sustained, planetary-scale pain acts as a resonant call across the dimensional veil. It awakens and attracts liminal entities, beings that dwell in the spaces between worlds, drawn to the scent of spiritual decay as predators are drawn to blood. These are not demons of mythic proportion, but parasitic forces of entropy and despair, whose sole purpose is to feed on and amplify negative emotional energy. They are the whispers of doubt that transform a minor insecurity into a crippling self-hatred, the architects of nightmares that drain the soul of its resilience, the unseen puppeteers that subtly manipulate human conflict for their own sustenance. Their influence spreads like a psychic contagion, fostering paranoia, deepening depression, and severing the bonds of trust between people. They operate in the shadows of the mind, their presence felt not as a distinct entity, but as an intensification of one's own worst thoughts and fears, making the battle against them an intimate and lonely war, waged within the confines of one's own consciousness. This pervasive spiritual decay inevitably leads to the desecration of the world's sacred spaces. The network of holy sites that form the planet's energy grid, the physical anchors for divine light, begins to flicker and fail. Ancient temples built on powerful ley lines, once vibrant with healing energy, now feel hollow and oppressive. Natural sanctuaries, groves, and mountains that have served as places of pilgrimage and vision for millennia lose their resonance, their sacred hum replaced by a discordant silence. The spiritual technology embedded in their construction, the sacred geometry, the astronomical alignments, becomes corrupted by the surrounding imbalance, causing them to leak their stored energy or, in some cases, to invert their function entirely, becoming places that drain rather than replenish the spiritual vitality of visitors. These sacred places become monuments to a lost connection, their silent stones a testament to the profound spiritual illness that has befallen the world, standing as empty houses where the divine once resided. Within this maelstrom of chaos, the most acute and personal agony is experienced by the soul kin of the Chosen One. This is the small, intimate cluster of souls who are cosmically contracted to support and shield the anchor, connected to them by bonds that transcend lifetimes. For them, the wound is not a distant, abstract event. It is a direct and unrelenting psychic assault. They feel every wave of the Chosen One's pain as if it were their own, their empathic channels transformed into conduits of suffering. This trial is their ultimate crucible. They must face the temptation to despair, to surrender to the overwhelming grief of seeing their brightest star fall. They are forced to confront their deepest fears and their own limitations as they take up the impossible task of holding the balance in the anchor's stead. Theirs is the unseen battle, waged in the quietest corners of the spiritual realms, as they form a living, breathing shield of love around their wounded heart, fighting to preserve the last ember of hope against the encroaching universal night. The final and most terrifying consequence of the wound is the initiation of what is known as the Great Forcing. With the passive, stabilizing influence of the Chosen One gone, the gentle spiritual guidance of the cosmos is replaced with a stark, non-negotiable ultimatum delivered to every single soul. The era of spiritual neutrality is over. The encroaching darkness and the memory of the fading light create an absolute polarization, compelling each individual to make a conscious and definitive choice. To stand still is to be consumed by the shadow. To remain asleep is to be swept away by the tide of fear. Thus, the wound, in its profound tragedy, reveals its paradoxical purpose. It is a catalyst for a forced evolution. It is the violent shattering of humanity's spiritual childhood, compelling it to stand on its own feet. The fall of the One becomes the great, desperate call for the awakening of all, a mandate for every soul to cease looking for an external savior and to instead ignite the divine spark within. It is the universe's most painful lesson, that the balance can no longer be entrusted to a single point of light, but must be reborn as a radiant constellation, held steady in the unified, awakened hearts of a humanity that has finally chosen to become its own salvation.